we're heading into session 5. So this is measuring ROI in the online channel. And we're thrilled to have Alister Greenwood join us here from Mondelez. So Alister is the head of global e-commerce insights. And I believe, Alister, your remit is focused on expanding e-commerce data provision and progressing analytical capabilities to accelerate growth, and understanding shopper behavior online and the digital path to purchase, capturing true ROI of online activations. So quite a remit for you. I understand your background. You've had experience in retail, global agency networks, major CPGs driving growth of iconic brands such as Oreo, Cadbury, Halls, Dove, Axe, Red Bull, Lindt, Gillette, and Budweiser as well. So quite a portfolio range in your background as well. Obviously, ROI.
When you say that.
I think we've got some crossover as well. Actually, I've been on worked on Gillette as well. So lots of complementary brands and a real good mix of experience in there. ROI is obviously a key topic across anyone who works in online and offline. So really looking forward to seeing your slides and going through your presentation.
Great.
We'll do Q&A at the end, so I'll be monitoring the chat and we'll get into some questions afterwards.
Okay, great.
Brilliant. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Okay. Screen.
All good.
Great, thank you very much. So thank you for that introduction, Katie, and thanks everyone, Sarah and the team for inviting me today. Very excited to be here, and hopefully this session will be sort of a good follow-on from the previous session from the team there, because obviously data analytics is a key part of what we're trying to look at here. Now I'll caveat with this, with measuring e-commerce, ROI online. I don't have any silver bullets here or any real quick wins with which can uncover the holy grail of this. But hopefully we can have a discussion, some of my thoughts, insights, learnings over the last few years, and be very focused on this. What we found works, what we found doesn't work, and also really how that might be appropriate for your organization. So really trying to think big and small, what capabilities we have to drive this. So as we sorry, just 1 second. There we go. So I'm just going to get straight into some myth busting quickly for you, because I know there's a few myths about ROI on e-commerce out there, and let's sort of open that up to start with. So first one from me, very much is I get a lot or have a lot of interaction with, is ROAS the same as ROI? ROAS is not the same as ROI. That's it, full stop. It's not the same. I'll explain that in more detail in a few slides time. However, ROAS is really just that return on ad spend. So it's an uplift on any activation you're doing online. ROAS is very important to know, because obviously anything we are doing online in a media pricing promotional sense, a ROAS is the lowest common denominator of what performance we can get from that. It's widely used because your agency partners have access to this data, whatever they're doing. There might be other data we require to get a much fuller view and take that ROAS more completely to an ROI, but in many cases they don't have that data. But the two are not the same, and I'll explain why in an example in a minute. Okay, next one. E-commerce data is different to store-based KPIs. Absolutely, yes, it is on one hand, and no, it's not on the other. We just heard in the previous presentation talking about the omni-channel really, and how important that is, right? Especially in if you're in CPG brands, grocery brands that will fulfill very, very heavily through a sort of full basket grocery.com shop. A lot of that is fulfilled through store-based fulfillment. Now, so store-based KPIs are still very important, right? The value is saying, the quantity we're selling, that price, there's promotion points, right? And the distribution of that is all very relevant if it's from a store-based element. But obviously, too, there are additional KPIs, right, that might come through for pure players where it's single item, where there is no store-based network. Those KPIs are still relevant, but then we have additional KPIs. We have all the digital shelf KPIs, ratings and reviews and others. So yes, they are similar, and yes, they are different. E-commerce cannot be compared to offline. E-commerce in the whole, can be different to offline, but again, it is also very similar. And the reason I have this on here is, and I think it's so important, because for all our organizations, they're all very embedded and understand very clearly the offline world, that store-based world that has been built over, many decades, even longer in many cases, how that operation of the offline world works, the effectiveness, the channels, the measures, the trading partnerships, right? The shopper marketing elements, the trade rates. These are all very, very embedded, understood throughout the organization. E-commerce is not. E-commerce is newer, right? We are all working very hard to drive that e-commerce immersion in our business, to drive our business forward. Integration and education will be a huge part of what we're all doing, but they are absolutely not the same. And that is and that remains to be true, that it is important that we show e-commerce in the same vein as the offline world, right? It is important that we help people understand those elements of how operation happens in e-commerce is similar to offline, because that's what they know. So we need to use that language. We need to bring that language and translation for what e-commerce is doing to the wider business, because ultimately that helps our case for driving more awareness, more understanding, more support for e-commerce, and at the same time gives us the opportunity to educate on how e-commerce is different, right? And where those comparisons can't be directly made. So those are some key elements, I believe, in what helps us be successful in this space. Okay. Next slide. As I said before, I wanted to have a slide on ROAS and ROI. ROAS and ROI are different, okay? Just here on the top, just to explain, ROAS really just measures any gross revenue generated by advertising, whether that be a media activation, whether it even be pricing or promotion work. Any advertising we are doing is measured by that lift in gross revenue generation is ROAS. ROI measures profit. Okay. Now I've got a little example for you here, just to sort of walk through that, right? When the formula is explained. So on the left-hand side, we're talking about ROAS. So if we see here, if we have a campaign, right, that cost us about $4,000 a month, say on any AdWords for advertising campaign, and generates about $15,000. There's a relationship there. There's a formula there already, right? We know our cost 4,000 and our revenue generation 15,000. That gives us a ROAS of 3.75. What does that mean? Well, it means that for every dollar we've spent in this campaign, we've earned $3.75 in sales. Okay, that's the ROAS. Now, if we were to bring that same explanation to ROI, that is different. Okay, ROI determines whether that campaign is worth the investment or not, because we need to take margin and other costs and elements into that understanding of really what are overall profits and the actual ROI. So if we look at this same approach again and estimate a margin rate of 20% on that activation that we were just doing, we have the following formula, whereby we're bringing revenue times that margin rate less the expenses. We divide it through those expenses again. And what we actually find here is that ROI is minus 0.25, or it's actually 25% negative. We have to understand the fuller picture where possible when we talk ROI or ROAS, right? ROAS is think of it as that lowest common denominator, the first element measure we can get. But we need further information to get to a real understanding of ROI and performance around driving profit, and really understanding, does that really help drive our business? Okay. So in terms of measuring ROI, what I want to firstly look at is really what you need to do that, right? And we had a big focus in the previous session on data analytics. This is true. It's data. Okay. Now, just looking at here, laying out the e-commerce retail analytics data, but obviously we have lots of different elements of consumer panel data and consumer metric data. We also have media elements of data. Now I'm just looking at this from this one tranche of data, right? But it's an understanding of what the different elements are. So we need to have clear time period data. We need to have accessible time periods. Monthly data is fine, weekly is better. We want definitely current year and previous year data if we can get. And we would need to be able to understand data over a longer period, so we can understand during campaign or post-campaign analysis, right? Those are the time periods. You're all familiar with that in the offline world. The same is true. Product level, right? E-commerce product level is different. I'm well aware of that challenge. Brand level is a common denominator really in e-commerce across many metrics. So brand level can be worked at. We can work at brand level. If we want to go into more detail, product level, SKU level is more preferable. And if we can get that. Now, I know that's in many of these markets, in UK, there isn't a total market read for e-commerce as yet. In many European markets, there is total read. It's not at SKU level. However, you will have data from different customers, key customers, that we can get to that data. So therefore, we're looking at a more of a microcosm of that market in terms of understanding, and it might be at the retailer level. And again, if we're then looking into retail partners that have marketplaces too, we're thinking about 1P versus 3P data that needs to be considered, and both are applicable. So that's the product level. Market level data. Okay, we're very familiar with this. What is our market? Are we looking total market? Are we looking at different sets of retailers? Are we looking at different regions? Obviously, in this case, we want to be focusing on that website platform and/or platforms if they have a number of banners, right? Where we can get that data, where that's connected in a complete environment. Also, in some cases, we want to be able to understand that e-commerce store-based sales, right? Especially if click and collect, and it's very much a store-based with one of our key brick and mortar partners, right? We want to understand their brick and clicks performance and that click and collect or store-based delivery. So that is important too, right? And that's important. And again, 1P, 3P can be, relevant here if that retailer has capabilities or not. And then in the fact level, right? Obviously, the more granularity of data and facts we can get, obviously sales volume, invest value, currency, and weight units is very important. Retailer margin, COGS, price, promotion, these elements are all very important with which help us understand that. So really, it's the data is there. And if you don't have all this data, that is not the end of the world. We can still we can still do analysis to get towards an ROI, an ROI profitability understanding without all this data, right? So we have to be flexible, we have to be agile, and we have to, use the best of what we have. And then what's also key, I think, with this is really looking at that performance effectively, around that granular data, but also partnership with your internal teams that are driving media, or with your media agency partners, for clear identification and awareness of awareness media and conversion media types, right? So two are very applicable and drive very different elements on e-commerce. Now, I'm not going to go into details on that today, but that's just to let you know that. Okay, so what I want to do here is just go through a few different methodologies of e-commerce that we have utilized and look at, and give you some guidance on what we're trying to do here. So this is the first one, marketing mix modeling. So this is a Bayesian regression modeling technique, okay, very detailed and very thorough, and it's going to give you a very strong read on what you're doing. Now, many parts of your businesses may already be doing this in your traditional marketing, in traditional media vehicles, right? So TV, digital, out of home, print, those traditional ones may be having this utilization. And that's great if we are, because as I said earlier on, we do want e-commerce to be integrated into the wider business, because we need to know how it performs in comparison to the wider business, because at the end of the day, we are all supporting a total business. So it is important that we have this consistency and understanding in the same methodology. So, an ROI is very good for that. Now, it comes with some data challenges, right? We need sort of 2 years of data, store by week by SKU level, and obviously not store based, and if it's from a DC based pure play retailer, well, that would be a different matter. But it's that week by SKU level data is important, and we want that for both the target brand and competitive brand or category as well, or it can be done even at, at SKU level, because really what this is around measuring incrementality of performance from the different media activations we have, or the different promotional activations we have, and it also will account for seasonality. So hence why such a big time period is required. Now, what this enables us to do is ROI in an MMM sense is calculated on net revenue basis for us. So we get to a very granular understanding. But as I said before, if that's not necessarily the consistency, or you have the data for that, that's okay. Because I think the biggest thing is really to ensure that alignment and relevance to the wider business discussion. let's try and drive consistency of existing techniques, because people will understand that and it will bring greater merit to what we are trying to do in e-commerce. Okay. And if data granularity at this level is available, it can be incorporated, right, for those markets, retailers, into MMM. So I am confident that there is data available in this market, and there are many others in Europe where you can do this with key retail partners, even if we don't have that granular data like a total market read. Okay, next one quickly, multi-touch attribution. So multi-touch attribution is again a very granular approach, but what it really doing, it's evaluating the touch point on that individual's path to purchase, and it's really trying to do that to understand that the movement and the direction, the touch points, and how that's influenced the shopper to accurately calculate a ROAS or ROI touch point, right? So it's really bringing that consumer data to understand that digital ad exposure and how it influences purchasing. Okay. Now, this is actually real data on the left of activations we have done. I won't tell you which market or which products it is, but these are, you can see different levels of multi-touch attribution performance, and I think that's in a ROAS sense. But really, it's very important because it really gives you certainly across some key markets, key customers, a real understanding to assess that online investment and the return of the different elements you're doing, especially around key events, right? Key events with big customers. So Amazon Prime Day the other week, that would have been a fantastic event to do some multi-touch around, to really the different ways you were connecting, in driving your Amazon Prime Day. Maybe you had some media, you had price promotion across different things. Where we have many cross-referenced activations, whether it be price, promotion, or media, multi-touch can give us a real interesting sense of what's worked and what's not across a very complex campaign. And then, okay, so bringing this sort of down the funnel, this is campaign sales lift. Now, this is really, and I'll go on to talk more around A/B-based sales lift. But what I want to do is just show you, this is an internal measurement sales lift that you could use with no matter really how limited the data provision you have, because it's not about a test and control variables, which are challenging on e-commerce, I know, and I'll talk about those more in a second. But this is really just to understand any promotion, marketing activation you've done, really basing it on that internal measurement, really understand the incremental revenue by analyzing that pre, during, post-promotion activations, right? And as I said previously, depending on the level of data we have around cost of goods, we can then understand whether that's incremental sales or we can get an ROI view on the profit, right? So it's just a sales-based analysis methodology. Weekly data is ideal, but this can be done at monthly data, and it can be done at SKU level or brand level, because really this is just driven off what that baseline, that non-promoted pre-period baseline is driving, preferably around an 8 weeks period, to understand the differences. And then with pre-trade margin contribution applied, we can get to a profit dimension, right? So what this does as well, I think, because it doesn't evolve, it really can be done with not a huge amount of data granularity. I think this is valuable because it enables us to experiment and understand some measurement performance of what we're doing, but also be consistent across different markets, different regions, add limited data, right? And it can enable us to apply a consistent approach. And as I said, consistency is important, really understanding that as we go through. Okay, I know we're getting towards time, so I'll just quickly, a couple of slides, and then I will wrap it up. So just to follow on from that previous slide on that internal sales lift approach, this is just a slide to show you, what we would do in terms of really testing ads and media in a real sales lift approach, where we're looking to A/B test, right? So we're really trying to isolate here a group of buyers in an exposure, non-exposure sense of an advertising to understand that performance. So again, this is coming down to the media we're having, the advertising. We match that across the group. So you can do that with your agency partners or internally if you have that capability, right? And that's often done through loyalty card data. And we define those cells. So we have that exposed, unexposed households, and we're looking for that lift based on the exposure that we have there. So that can give us that incremental sales lift, total incrementality, ROAS, or even further an ROI if we have that cost of goods, margin data are available. Okay, so in summary, there are a landscape of measurement studies available to us, to you, right? Some of them take longer, more involved, longer time frame, take longer to complete, like an MMM or even market test studies. Some are more quickly done, right? Brand lifts, A/B tests, sales lifts are more quickly done. And so there's an element of pros and cons to both that I'll leave here. I won't go through this in much detail. But obviously you can see that further information, these slides will be available after the session. So from me, final thoughts. It's really about starting small and iterating over time. Explore some of these different test methodologies where they're applicable, where you have the data, where you think you can really make a difference, and test, learn, and scale. That's where I would start, right? There is no magic answer. And in doing that, prioritize biggest customers, right? And best data provision. Often the biggest customers will have better data provision, so that's helpful. But really what's important is driving that collaboration between third-party data providers and media providers, right? Because that symbiotic approach is very important. That synergy of that data set is important. Internal partnership too is critical, right? Marketing, media, insights, analytics teams, e-commerce, key to unlock that potential together, right? They all have a key part to play. They're all bringing a lot of value and experience to the table. And, it helps us coming together to really bring, a comparative measurement methodology, because that's going to get accepted and understood in the business, right? And that's critical. And what we're really trying to get to is an ROI element for e-commerce that can be considered alongside all other vehicles, all other measurements that the media, advertising, promotion your business has, because that's critical that the business understands, in wider discussions, how e-commerce performs in different elements, for your brands or categories or markets versus different channels, different media vehicles, and it's really important because obviously we're trying to drive that e-commerce sense, but it's important that the business knows where and how to invest correctly. So that was it from me. Thank you for your time, and I'll hand back.
Thanks, Alister. Huge wealth of data, and really, really interesting to see Mondelez journey and how you've kind of put all the framework and methodology around ROI and e-commerce. I think you guys are really advanced on your journey. It's kind of great to see how the future should look.
Yeah, we have pockets, in certain pockets and markets and retailers, we get some real progress, and others where you might not expect it, it's taking more time, and we're having to iterate more slowly and test and learn, and we have data challenges, or even, compliance challenges in terms of, people connecting and saying, oh, yes, you can have the data to use. So there is no right answer, right? We've really just got to try and progress. We found these different approaches useful. I hope you guys do, from taking some of them on and seeing how you experiment and learn where you have the capabilities and the data, and hopefully it's a journey that you can take the whole organization on, really, because I think that's the key thing is helping them understand that.
Definitely. As I kind of look at the journey you guys have been on, and the wealth of data we have access to in e-commerce teams, I'm curious as to how much you guys have managed to do this in-house, and how much you either to date have had to kind of bring in experts, and looking forward, do you see it sustainable that you continue to do all of this analysis in-house and crunch all of these analysis?
So we haven't done all of that in-house. That's our approach. But in terms of, some of that marketing mix modeling, we're not doing that. We would do that with some of our agency partners, and we have a couple in different markets we do it with. Some of them that the lower down, more simple, short-term things we're definitely doing in-house. And again, I think it's just part of that. What's that wider repertoire that we're trying to build, and in partnership with capabilities of partners, right? Or in-house. So we have a mixed approach. Some might have a very big in-house team. You might not have any at all, and therefore talk to your data providers about what capabilities they have to help you, because they will have, and they'd love to help you. And so I think, as I said, there's no right or wrong way. Just try and start the journey.
Okay, great. And the other question I had for you is, when you look at kind of the roles and responsibilities of where ROI sits, how do you kind of decide who takes ownership for this? Because there's so much work here that involves, collating the data, tracking, reporting it. How have you at Mondelez designed the roles and responsibilities and ownership of this important?
Yeah, so I mean, in our wider organization, generally insights and analytics own that ROI,
Really?
return on performance measurement in that sense. That might be different in different teams, right? Depending on whether it's you have sales team that have their own, sort of analytic support or not. And I don't think there's any right or wrong way answer to who owns that. But I think the key thing is really that partnership of those different constituent functions, right? Marketing, media, sales, to bring that together and have that right data and then share that back out accordingly. So I think that's the key thing, regardless of who's owning and driving. It's making sure everyone comes on that journey with you.
Okay. Yeah, great. And that seems to be working well for you guys, looking at the...
I mean, yeah, it's been a journey, right? There's, it's sometimes feel like 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, but I think we're making progress every year, and that's, I think that's what we're trying to do.
Brilliant. Great. Well, I think it's a good place to wrap, and we're now running on to our next session. So huge thank you, Alister. Great slides and really, really fascinating data to see.
Thank you very much for having me. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.